Touchdown BC is sponsored by CFC. CanadaFootballChat.com is a national amateur football website and a source for high school and recruiting news in Canada. CFC's mission is to promote players, coaches, administrators, teams, and leagues from coast to coast. 40-plus local reporters write CFC's content covering Canadian, NCAA, and CIS recruiting, and high school players and teams across the continent. Touchdown BC is also sponsored by Chris Peckett. Veteran trial lawyer and football coach is now restricting his law practice to motor vehicle personal injury claims. Call his office at 604-519-6060 for a free consultation.
Welcome to episode 6 of Touchdown BC. I'm Ty Clark. On the left over here is Adam Cordick. Adam, there's some huge games this weekend. You were at the Vancouver College New West game. How was that?
Well, you know what? It was a great game, well played by either team. Our Irish came out on top, though, against New West. But not only that game, there were some huge conference games going on in high school. For more on that, Ty, take it away.
What a weekend it was for high school football around the province. We had blowouts, we had seesaw fairs, and we even had some nail-biters. There was some impact games this weekend, and with it, we saw some upsets, and some teams arise as legitimate contenders down the stretch.
Salmon Arm, Rutland. Rutland has the ball early on, and they look to get into the salmon territory, but the fish have other ideas. Elias Gearing picked off, and a nice little return by Salmon Arm. Next cue we go. Long field goal attempt for Rutland, and Gearing fails to get it between the uprights. Missed field goal, that's not good. Salmon Arm's ball, but they can't do anything on offense, so they have to punt it away. And watch what happens here. Rutland picks it up. No, they don't. A school of salmon swarm in and run upstream with it, and after some shaky camera work, Salmon Arm get their first touchdown of the day. But Rutland would get the ball back, and they're pretty hungry. Scrambling around the pocket, Gearing calls his own shot. Nice 20-yard gain there. But after 3 botched attempts on offense, Rutland would be going for the field goal. And Gearing totally redeems himself. Rutland starting to make a bit of a splash here too. Salmon Arm get the ball back, and they toss it to Jace Robert, the 200-pound Tyee, and he's got some speed in his step. That's before he takes on half of the Rutland defense. Nice gain of 25. Following cue we go. Rutland moved the ball into the red zone, and Eric Bright has the right answer for the Doubters. Rutland up 9-8. They would miss the PAT, but Gearing would go once again for the long field goal, hoping to put Rutland ahead by 4, but he misses wide left once again. Salmon Arm couldn't muster up any offense after this, though, with Rutland winning a close one, 9-8. Handsworth, Seaquam. From the get-go, Tristan Yansu finds Elder Fishbean, and just like that, Seaquam is up 7-0. But Handsworth would get it back and march downfield with Sam Full connecting to Jacob Gazazada, who uses those big strides, busting it to the outside in for the score. Then it was Siakam's turn. Tristan Yansu wants it and takes it himself. Siakam back in front 14-7. Handsworth would punt it away later, so Siakam gets a chance, and they would capitalize on it with Masaki Kawanumi finding the lane, make a couple nice cuts, and he'd be gone. Siakam up 2 scores. Handsworth wouldn't be done there though. Sam Full finds our boy Leon Kioya, last week's player of the week, makes a nice dip and a nice doodle, and he's in for the score. Nice touchdown, Leon. Later on, Handsworth goes for it on 4th down, and Sam Matzel stuffed at the goal line. Huge defensive play, Siaquam, but they'd be forced to punt after that. And look who's waiting in the backfield. Jacob Gazazada, already with 1 TD on the day, and he puts that 6'3" frame to good use, making big moves and a couple of nice dekes, and he'd be gone to the end zone. Nobody's touching him. Handsworth down 1. PAT attempt blocked. This would be crucial later on. Siakam regains possession. Travis Yansu drops back, and lets it fly to Tyson Philpott. Nice catch, even nicer run. He has to break one tackle at the 15, and that would be it. Nobody is getting close to him. Nice touchdown there. Hansworth letting it slip away. Sam Thole decides not to. Throws it up to Jacob Gazizada. Great catch. Hansworth still in it. Hansworth would get on the board once more, but it wouldn't be enough as they lose a nail-biter 35-34. Argyle, West Van. Argyle marched the ball downfield quickly, and before you can hop around your living room with 1 foot, Cole Theobald tosses up a touchdown. Piper's up 7-0. Argyle kicks it off, and this West Van special teams unit looked pretty good all game. Ethan Whiting takes the ball, pounds it outside, and is anybody going to stop him? Yes, they do. West Van couldn't do anything with it, though, as Argyle retakes the ball. And what's this? Reverse! Everyone is caught off guard as Ben Dejani takes it the other way and keeps chipping away into deep, deep West Van territory. Immediately after that, the ball goes right back into Cole Theobald's hands, which is never a good sign for opposing teams. Cole Theobald tosses up a second major of the day, 14-0 Pipers. Argyle has the ball later on, the offensive line implodes. West Van bring in the heat. Shortly after, Cole Theobald fumbles the ball, West Van recovers. Next cue we go. Theobald under center. And he finds a streaking Aiden Pierce in for the TD. But what's this? A hold? Call this one back. Same play. Aiden Pierce gets over. And just like clockwork with these two, another TD, this one would count. Later on, West Van still under siege by Argyle. And Peter Piper packed a pile of pickled peppers. That would be it for this one. Argyle winning big, 21-0. Now let's take a look at the standings in the Pacific Conference. Over to the Western Conference we go, with Notre Dame beating Belmont, Mount Doug topping South Delta, and Vancouver College beating New West. And here's how things are shaping up in the Western Conference standings. Take a look at some of the other scores in the Eastern Conference. WJ Moab beats Centennial. STM has their way with Lord Tweedsmuir, and Terry Fox with a big win over the Kelowna Owls. And in Eastern Conference standings, STM and Terry Fox are 1-2, while Kelowna had a big loss to Terry Fox, and after that, it's not even close. Taking a look at the AA scores in the Eastern Conference, Rick Hansen and Pitt Meadows get crushed, while Mission wins a nail-biter against Robert Bateman 10-9. And with the wins, all three teams move to the top of the standings in the Eastern Conference. And taking a look at some of the scores in the Southern Conference, nothing was even close. And in the Southern Conference standings, only two teams remain undefeated in Langley and Hugh Boyd. And in the Okanagan, South Kamloops defeated Westside 38-9, and Vernon topped Valley View 27-8. And in the Okanagan Conference, the two teams at the top look pretty strong in South Kamloops and Vernon, while Westside's in the middle, and Valley View and C. Fulton are bringing up the rear. And in the Western Conference, John Barsby beats Windsor 44-20, while Carson Graham has their way with Bolinas 35-7. And in the Western Conference standings, John Barsby and Carson Graham look borderline untouchable at the top of their conference. And the lone game in the Northern Conference looked like a tight matchup in a hockey game. And with the win, PGSS moves to 5-0, while Kelly Road moves to 1-4. This week's High School Player of the Week is Ben Hladek. Big Ben was dominant on both sides of the ball in Vernon's win over Valley View, as he recorded 105 yards and a touchdown on offense, while registering 8 tackles and 2 sacks on defense. This week's TDBC top 5 teams remain the same as last week. Terry Fox remains in second with a big victory over Kelowna, while New West fell to the number 3 seed Fighting Irish, and South Delta losing to the number 1 seed in Mount Doug.
Welcome to the BC High School Report. Joining us in studio, as he does every week, is a local celebrity around these parts, Dino Jeremia. Dino, how are you doing today?
I'm fantastic, thanks.
Awesome. Well, let's get into the action. We saw some big games this weekend, obviously. New West looked really good in the first half against Vancouver College. They're up a touchdown with 2 minutes prior to half, go into the halftime, down a touchdown. What happened in that one?
I think with all the games that are coming up now, we're going to see some teams really expose depth. So some of the good teams that have depth are able to sustain if somebody gets injured, they're going to be the ones that continue on as they go into the playoffs. And I think some of the teams like New West, if they run into a couple of injuries, they miss a couple of key guys, it's really tough coming down the stretch to fill those holes.
Let's talk a little bit now about the Eastern Conference, which is shaping up to be one of the most competitive conferences. You were actually at the Terry Fox Kelowna game. What happened in that one?
It was a great game. I was really impressed with Kelowna. Not only Parker Simpson, who we've talked about several times on this show, but the supporting cast, the Zach Vint, DiBiase, they all came to play. For them to come down and play that type of tough game with Terry Fox, tied at the half. And then again, Terry Fox, I think, again, what I just mentioned, just that little bit more depth as they got into the second half, carried them on to the victory.
And we've been talking about the competitiveness of the Eastern Conference. A lot of people don't realize that STM is still actually undefeated. What do you see for STM going down the stretch here?
STM's one of those teams that we haven't seen them play one of the top dogs yet. So it's going to be really interesting when they start, when they come up against Terry Fox, see what kind of game that is. They're always tough. They're always well coached. So they're one of those teams that we haven't seen in the top, but certainly have that potential.
Let's move over to the Pacific Conference now. Argyle lost a close one to Handsworth the week previously. This past week, they won 21-0 against West Van. Cole Theobald had 3 touchdowns in this one, 3 touchdowns the previous week. What do you see with him and this Piper's offense?
Well, I've known Cole for a few years now, and he played on our provincial team when we beat Team USA in Texas and came up with a big play in that game to intercept and seal the victory for us. So ever since I've known him, he's been able to make those plays, big plays. He's not afraid to take chances, and he's having an outstanding season. So I think that Argyle's a team to watch in that Pacific Division, and look forward to seeing a lot more of that from Cole.
Absolutely, and if we take a little look at AA now, Vernon moved to 2-0, and our player of the week, Ben Hladik, had a big game on both sides of the ball. What do you see for Vernon? What are some other teams that you see being hot down the stretch here for AA?
Well, I think down the stretch, we're going to see Vernon. We're going to see how good they are when they come to the coast, and if they can take on some of the AA teams, whether it's Langley, Holy Cross, some of the teams in the Lower Mainland, and then on the island still, there's always John Barsby and Bolinas. So they're all kind of fighting for that top 5 positioning. Langley looked good, Holy Cross had looked good, John Barsby, they've all kind of taken turns looking really good as we go through the season. So we've got to see if Vernon can come down to the coast, win on the coast in the Lower Mainland, or beat one of those other teams on the island. And that's really going to be their destiny.
And that's your BC High School Report with Dino Jeremia.
With 5 games left in the community season, teams look to start building momentum toward the postseason, or keeping the momentum that they have already gained. This past weekend, we saw a pivotal matchup in Midget. The 5-0 CMFA Falcons took on the 4-1 NSMF Bears, in which could be a championship game come late November. Before we get to that game, let us get you caught up to the rest of the games throughout our province.
Let's start in Bantam. Undefeated South Delta Rams taking on the Chilliwack Giants. First quarter, running back Andrew Kraft runs it in from 1 yard out for the score. Rams next drive, it's Kraft again, this time from 4 yards out, who takes the sweet play in for the major. I wonder if his pregame meal is mac and cheese. 14-0 Rams. Second cue at South Delta pivot Michael Calvert, who drops back, buys some time with his feet, and delivers a perfectly thrown ball to Billy Matwachina in the back of the end zone for a TD. The very next kickoff, Rams kick it high in the air. It takes a funny bounce, and who is there to pick it up? It's Rams QB Mike Calvert for 6. 27-zip, Rams. Late in the queue, it's now Cummings who gets the Rams 3 points with the field goal. Third cue, Calvert punched the Giants, but the return is muffed. And right there is Rams' Jarvis Dashkowicz to recover. Next play, it's Jello Iwatko who powers his way in for the TD. The Rams would end this one with a pick from Dashkowicz. The Rams move to a perfect 7-0 record with this big win. South Delta Rams 36, Chilliwack Giants 0. Now here is a look at the rest of the Bantam scores from this past weekend. Now here are the standings. South Delta still on top. Great game this weekend as North Surrey will visit South Delta. Let's take a look at Midget. The game of the week was Coquitlam just beating North Surrey by a rouge. The standings for Midget look like this. The Falcons remain undefeated after 6 games, with the Stamps and the Bears close behind. In Junior Bantam, we saw nothing but huge wins this past weekend. We have got a log jam at the top of the standings with 5 teams only with 1 loss. The big game this weekend will be the Hyaks taking on the Falcons. Now here is a look at the scores from BMFL Pee-wee this past weekend. Pee-wee ball for ya. Chilliwack Blue versus Chilliwack Red. Sebastian Gonzalez with everyone's favorite signature entrance. First cue, it's Lucas Fever with the QB keeper, and the score blew up 8-0. Red would respond. Raiden Maston gets the snap, stays behind his O-line. Blue can't find him. Raiden then finds some room on the outside and takes off. Keep going. He goes untouched on the longest QB sneak I have ever seen. Second cue, Austin Wegener takes the direct snap, finds a huge hole, and would rumble from 20 yards out for the major. Red takes the lead 12-8. In the third, Red looks to get another one. Travis Richley takes the handoff from 5 yards out, and is it a touchdown? You bet. Later, Blue will execute a trick play right out of the 1994 classic Little Giants. It's Aiden Saunders who will throw it up to a wide-open Tyler Kelly for the score. It wouldn't be enough, though. Chilliwack Red stays unbeaten. They win this one 18-14 over Blue.
And when we come back from break, the UBC Thunderbirds played their first game since the turkey break against the Alberta Golden Bears.
The CFL and our partners at Football Canada want to make sure we keep growing, promoting, and investing in a safe game. Football Canada now requires all amateur coaches to be safe contact trained by 2017. By creating a standard of safety for all in our football community, we're making an already great game even better. Make sure your youth coach is safe contact trained, because making a safe game means making a better game.
Welcome back to Touchdown BC. Adam, UBC had a big game against Alberta.
Yeah, it's nice to see UBC coming back off the turkey break, playing Alberta at home with 3 games remaining, looking for the win for that playoff push. What happened in that one?
After the turkey break, the UBC Thunderbirds had a lot of questions thrown their way as to how they'd perform down the final stretch of the season. Facing a Golden Bears team hungry for vengeance after a loss to the Birds prior to the break, UBC would have to be on their A game for the rest of their final 3 games of the regular season.
The UBC Thunderbirds have their first home game in 3 weeks and they're pumped. Early on, Quinn Van Gilslick from 19 yards out when he drills the field goal. Birds off to an early 3-0 lead. Next cue we go. Brandon Deschamps from a yard out, and nobody's touching this guy. Birds up 10-0 just 15 minutes into the game. After the Thunderbirds scored a defensive touchdown, Alberta kicked a field goal. UBC would get the ball back, and Michael O'Connor threads the twine to one of his favorite targets, Alex Morrison, who would rumble 36 yards in for the major. Third quarter we go, and it's Deschamps getting the rock once again, this time hustling and bustling and marching in 68 yards unscathed. UBC started to pull away in a big way. And after that, it's like deja vu all over again, with Deschamps outdoing himself once again, splitting the seam right up the gut for the 32-yard major, his 3rd TD of the day. Still near the end of the third, Trevor Casey, the former Terry Fox Raven, runs it to the outside and fumbles it. But former Mount Doug grad Marcus Davis picks up the loose ball and takes it the final 20 yards. Just over 1 minute later, after a quick 2-and-out, Golden Bears are forced to punt. They probably should have reminded themselves just who it was they were kicking to. Marcus Davis takes the offering and doesn't think twice about it. Davis goes 66 yards to the end zone with his 2nd TD in 1 minute and 10 seconds. Alberta's backup QB would also find the end zone for the Bears, but it was too little too late. UBC wins big, 54-10.
Welcome to the UBC Report. Joining me in studio as he does every week is Jim Mullen, the voice of Canada West football on Shaw TV. Jim, let's start off with the Alberta game. The main story here was Brandon Deschamps, 16 carries for 176 yards. He had 16 carries the previous game for 86 yards. What was the big difference in this one?
Well, I think when Alberta travels with a short staff, they can't rotate as many through the defensive front. But I think UBC got something started in that first game in Alberta 2 weeks ago. And they just followed up by pounding that Alberta defensive line. I think their offensive line has a bit of a stride now. It'll be a little bit different facing the Saskatchewan Huskies this coming weekend, a game that folks can see on Shaw TV coming up on Friday night. Because the Saskatchewan Huskies, even though they were rolled by the Calgary Dinos, Mercer Timmis had less than 50 yards rushing. It's the first time that he's been capped to something that's not in 3 digits throughout the course of the year. So if they think that they're going to roll with Brandon Deschamps against the Huskies, they might have another thing coming.
Fair enough. And another storyline here was Marcus Davis. He had 1 rushing touchdown, led the team in receptions, and had a punt return for touchdowns. So what is his role in the team now?
Well, his role is Mr. Everything, I guess. The one thing about the rushing touchdown is when you have him operating as an inside receiver, you can bring him across a formation and use him on a jet sweep. And that's one way that even last year the Thunderbirds tried to get him doing and get him involved and get the football to a talented athlete. In terms of return touchdowns, we've seen over his 2 years, he's very skilled at it. The key is with return touchdowns, whether it's kickoff or punt return, who do you rotate in there? Maybe it's not Marcus Davis every time. Maybe it's Travell Pinto, who's shown that he knows the way to the house. Maybe it's Morrison, who was the Canada West leader in kickoff return yardage 2 years ago. There are a number of options there for UBC. But yeah, you can use Marcus Davis any number of ways. But I think he's most potent as a receiver. Thunderbirds tried to use him as a running back when Brandon Deschamps was injured. Not that good between the tackles. He's a guy that needs that outside space. So running him in jet, running him as a receiver, running him as a returner, open space is what works for him.
Now, defensively, Stavros Katsantonis had a big, long fumble recovery. He had 2 interceptions. But besides that, the defense looked pretty solid. Was it a case of the defense playing really well, or was it a case of Alberta just not looking good offensively?
I think it was a case of probably a little from column A and a little from column B. But the Thunderbirds did make those adjustments to their defense 2 weeks ago against the Alberta Golden Bears. Going away from that cover 0, covering a number of layers in the defensive backfield. So with some of the adjustments they made, I think basically those 2 games were like 2 long halves of games. And the more that UBC gained momentum through that first game in Alberta, I think it just carried over to the second game.
And as you alluded to earlier, Saskatchewan played the last 2 games against Calgary, tough matchups. UBC played the last 2 games against Alberta. Saskatchewan's last win was against UBC. What do you see in this next coming game against them?
Well, it's going to be tough. I think it's going to be tough for both sides. The Saskatchewan Huskies haven't been embarrassed like that on their home field like they were against the Calgary Dinos in recent memory. They were beaten in nearly every aspect of the game with the exception of their run defense. Drew Burko, quite frankly, was awful in the first half. Opening drive, interception when he was closing in on the red zone. Closing drive of the first half, an interception. He was off his game in pressure situations, so that's not good news for the Saskatchewan offense. They need a bounce-back game. The bounce-back game that they got earlier this season was against the UBC Thunderbirds. Let's see if they've discovered anything to get them another bounce back game to make this run towards the playoffs in the last 2 weeks a little more interesting. I suspect, though, that the Thunderbirds have an opportunity here to really go after the juggler in terms of making sure that the Saskatchewan Huskies are not a factor in that 2-3 game. So if they can close out against the Huskies on the road, they've got a very interesting game coming up the week after against the Manitoba Bisons, which will likely determine home field advantage in the Canada West playoffs in that 2-3 game, which would be huge for the program.
Well, there's certainly going to be no lack of excitement down the stretch here. That's your UBC report with Jim Mullen.
It's time for my grandma's favorite segment, the CIS BC Born Player Report. With the Canada West back in action this past weekend, you could bet there would be tons of players to choose from, especially with UBC getting a monster win against Alberta. That was indeed the case. Let's get started.
First, we have Brandon Deschamps, the Prince George native and Kelly Road alum, rushed for 176 yards and 3 touchdowns in a win against Alberta. Then there was Vancouver College alum Rashawn Simonize, who had a huge game for his Dinos. He had 6 receptions, 130 yards, and 2 majors in a win over Saskatchewan. Now here is a look at the rest of the BC-born players that had impact performances in the CIS this past weekend.
Well, that about does it for us here at Touchdown BC. Adam?
Well, with only 6 weeks left in high school and community football, this weekend is going to be a huge measuring point for some teams looking to make that final push to the playoffs and also gain momentum for that.
Yeah, there's some big games going on in community across the board, and then obviously in high school, some big matchups, especially in the Eastern Conference. And you can't forget that Saskatchewan's playing UBC next week. That's going to be a big one.
You know what? I usually would like to cheer for Saskatchewan, but it looks like they might be out of it. So I'm jumping on the UBC bandwagon. Pretty excited for the UBC playoff push.
It's not just me. You heard it from this guy first. I'm Ty Clark. He's Adam Cordick. Thanks for watching.
Touchdown BC is sponsored by